WELSTech is back on the air. This is episode 411 for Tuesday, September 22nd. I'm Martin Spriggs, and this is a show about technology and ministry, and we're so happy that you joined us. I'm also very happy that Sally Draper has decided to join us again for episode 411. 411, that's kind of a universal number for, getting information, right?
Yeah, we've got lots of great information to share today, as usual. No thanks to us, really, but thanks to a wonderful interview. I'm excited that Tom Plowman from the Core was able to join us. We're looking forward to playing an interview with him, and just lots of great listener feedback, as usual.
Right. It is a team sport, this WELSTech thing. So that's one of the neat things about it, is trying to pick everybody's brains, find those people who are doing innovative and interesting things. And as you mentioned, Tom is one of those guys. Tom joined us at our WELSTech conference a month or two ago, talking about technology and music and worship. So we decided, well, let's have Tom on and tell everybody, even those who weren't able to attend his class, a little bit about what he spoke about and some questions on the side that we threw at him to talk a little bit about what they're doing at the Core there in Appleton, Wisconsin, and some of the cool technologies that he's involved with. Tom is one of those guys, I get the sense that he's just kind of hungry for finding technology and ministry intersections, and that'll come through loud and clear in the interview. So why don't we take a listen to the interview, then we'll talk about it in just a second. Again, our thanks to Tom for taking the time to talk about his technology endeavors at the Core. Neat, cool stuff. So not run-of-the-mill kinds of technologies that he's talking about.
No, after we were done with the interview, Tom sent us a few pictures to back up all those cool things he described. And the one I'm showing on my screen right now is just their little audio-video corner there at the Core. It looks a bit intimidating to me. He's got quite the panel and I don't know, 3 different computer screens, a keyboard there, and a double mixer with more wires than you can count. It's quite a setup that they have.
That's sometimes what it takes, yeah.
Yep. He also included a couple of pictures of the screen and the projection cross that he described during the interview. So here's that giant screen with some Bible passages on it and imagery and things. And then off to the side here on the right is the cross that he said he built out of foam or whatever that he uses to do projection mapping to have information on the screen. And then the same setup, but a view of what it looks like during a service. Actually, this looks like a wedding service where they have the screen behind them, the cross over here with their name on it, and quite impressive to see how that all comes together.
Very cool. A lot of things struck me about the interview, Sally. There's a lot of directions you could go. One of them was kind of the team effort that it takes to pull something like this off, or as he kind of intimated in the interview, for anybody looking to introduce any kind of technology into a worship service, it really just can't be one person. You got the technical team, you have what he called the creative team, which was an interesting approach. And he talked a little bit about the name being kind of important, where the creative types like to be able to spread their wings a little bit and be part of a team that can create. And that's what they call them, the creative team. And maybe to try and look under the rocks and find some of those types who don't always necessarily think about volunteering, just kind of surfacing some of those gifts that God has blessed individuals with in your congregation who won't normally otherwise think of serving, but interesting ways they try and do that there.
Definitely. I think that whole team conversation reminded me of the book we're writing, Martin, With All Your Heart, where we're talking about project management and involving a whole team and getting some big things done within your church or school. So we'll have to keep the interview with Tom in mind as we get further into that book effort of ours. I think one thing with teams that's really critical is being able to collaborate. You and I collaborate every week. We do it using a shared mind map, and there are a lot of tools out there that you can use. There's online mind mapping and certainly online data processing type tools. Is that even a term anymore? Data processing software? No.
Oh, I think so.
But maybe better said, office type tools where you can do word processing and spreadsheets collaboratively, things like that. You can do that obviously in the Google Docs suite. You can do it with Office 365, and there are others. So finding the right tool set.
Yeah, and we're going to have fun talking about that in the book. Once we get to those chapters. Another really key point that Tom made that we'll be talking about in our project management chapters is the planning portion. Not just to be able to communicate with the team, but what you do when you communicate, and that's really planning and the amount of lead time that is necessary to do some of these very creative things. It's not just the week before. Not even just the month before. It's building a schedule, having a plan, putting all these things together, and trying to get out ahead of this so that it's not thrown together and sometimes looks that way, where you're trying to anticipate all the things that could go wrong, take those out of the equation, and give God your best.
You know, Martin, you're a glass half full kind of person. I have said that many times. I was thinking it's not just the day before, forget week and month, but I think a lot of people maybe function in that day before mentality. So yours truly included. So it's good to have lead time for sure.
Yeah, and then you throw in those tools, and then you've got a recipe for a good product, and that's obviously you want to put your best foot forward especially for those worship services. So that's kind of the highlight of the week. God's word is front and center, and you don't want to introduce anything that would detract or distract from the listeners and viewers digesting that. He talked about a number of things that I think are near and dear to our heart. One of them is asking for feedback, listening to the audience, and kind of probably a novel concept for some congregations is to ask how you're doing. How was the worship service? How were the choir pieces? How'd the flow of the service go? The readings, the sermon, the hymns that were picked, kind of a nice loop that you want to maybe get into, and then once you receive, figure out how to receive the feedback, what you do with it, and then kind of this continuous cycle of improvement. And it was very important to him and their congregation to continually get that feedback loop going.
Yeah, I think we could probably spend a whole episode on that feedback concept.
Maybe it's something put that on our radar, where we
definitely
have to figure out how to talk about that reasonably.
And what you do with the information when you get it, besides be very afraid of it. I think maybe that's something that keeps people from doing it. But how you can use it constructively.
Got to embrace that. And that's not just for church or church services. I think it's in Bible study, school feedback, listening to the parents, listening to the students, just a good habit to get into. And there's all kinds of tools and technologies to enable that kind of feedback. So I think that would be something to explore in maybe a full show at some point, and maybe find some good examples of congregations or schools taking advantage of the technologies and putting that feedback to good use.
So Tom really earned his nickel, although he was on for free. He gave us lots of good ideas and even future show ideas. So we thank you, Tom, especially for joining us and sharing what's going on with the technologies at the core.
Yeah, and blessings on your work there. It's exciting to watch the progress of that congregation. We should probably move along in our little show. Let's move on to news in tech, and I will share my screen here because Apple's been in the news a lot lately, and one of the things that recently launched just the other day was a new update to their mobile operating system, iOS. iOS 9 is now out. Number of different things. They've improved a couple apps, Notes being one. They've added a news app, but they've also added some features that are hopefully helpful. One of them for iPad users is this ability to split your screen, so you can actually have two apps up at once. Now, this will not work on every iPad. It's got to be a more modern iPad. The iPad Air 2, some of the newer minis can do this, where you can multitask, basically. So you've got two apps, and then you can drag the little divider in the middle of the screen to increase or decrease one side or the other. So that's a productivity tool that I think they're hoping will take off and make it even more useful. Not obviously available on the iPhone, but some of the other things that they introduced are available on the iPhone. The Notes app has become more useful, where you can drag in, I think, media, add checklists, add images, those kinds of things. So they've improved that, which had kind of been a long neglected kind of thing. You can do some more things with your photos. So actually, you could sketch on your notes as well. You can do more things with photos. There's a multi-select option. So if you want to delete a whole bunch of photos at the same time, what you used to have to do is click the edit button and then photo by photo by photo, tap, 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 tap. Now you can actually drag across the screen and select more photos and delete those. Apparently, there's been improvements to the Maps app. Transit directions. If you live in a big city, you can get that kind of information. Some nearby directions. Apple Pay is supposed to even be even better. Improvements to iCloud. Lots of different things coming out of Apple with iOS 9. Free if you have an Apple device. So just make sure you check that out. I've also updated the Wells mobile app to play a little bit nicer with iOS 9. It was kind of wreaking havoc there for a while, so I had to quick launch and update to make sure everything was working properly. So make sure you update, not only if you update to iOS 9, make sure you update the Wells mobile app as well. It should be in the store, in the Play Store.
I got it all right here on my phone, Martin. iOS 9 and the new Wells mobile app. So beautiful. Working just fine for me. Thanks for that.
No problem. Let's move on to our Wells Now section.
And Wells has got a lot of stuff happening right now.
They do.
One of the things that we want to remind you of is the Interactive Faith Bible Study, which is happening every Wednesday evening, not just once, but twice on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Central Time, to kind of hit all the different time zones and hopefully give groups of people a chance to gather together to study the book of Elisha with Professor Keith Wessel, who is at Martin Luther College and leading that study. So dig into the Word with a whole group of people virtually using the Interactive Faith Online Bible Study.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting this time because he's gathered some students so that he's got a live audience in front of him. So you can kind of hear the interaction, the questions they ask, as well as the questions that come through the chat function, through the Interactive Faith tool, which is live stream. So it kind of adds a little bit different dynamic, kind of nice. A couple of the presenters have done that in the past. I think it just adds a little bit of personality to it, where you get to see a class go on, but also participate in the class.
Next up, I want to point you to a brand new website recently launched by Wells China Partners. They have a new name, a new brand, you might call it, 316 Now. And you can get to their website at 316now.org. And they're also featuring links to Twitter and Facebook. So you'll want to follow them on both of those sites as well and keep up with the news. And they've got a newsletter you can subscribe to, all kinds of exciting things going on with the China Partners group. So cool check it out at 316 Now.
Very cool. I'm assuming just a reference to John 3:16. They've got the passage right there on the homepage. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, one more mention, as we have mentioned in past weeks, that we have a little photo challenge going on with WELSTech. And we'd love it if you guys could participate. We are looking for pictures of school and Bible study this month. And we've had a few submissions, some nice Bible study group pictures, a couple of books, commentary kind of look, and then one school playground picture. We want to caution our listeners not to really submit pictures of children, even though that's who's normally in those schools. Maybe more just generic pictures is what we're looking for. So get on it, because September is almost over. We only have about a week left. So you want to be part of this challenge. We have some really great photo prizes that we're giving away. You can find out information about all of that over at welstech.wels.net/photo challenge.
Plus,
and
we'll
we'll
get
have
a
that link in the show notes.
Submit anything.
Oh my goodness. Everybody needs an orange WELSTech screen cleaner for sure.
I know. Yeah, absolutely.
Got mine right here.
All right. Very nice. Let's move on to our picks of the week.
And I will go first, Martin. I have a pick from my friend Cindy Krieger. She actually wrote to us to let us know about an article on Jen's Trends website. The article title is "Could You Lose All Your Social Media Followers?" And it's talking about some kind of high-profile hacks of various accounts and giving you some safeguards and things to consider regarding your social media accounts. And I think they have some really good tips in here. Jen has some really good tips in this article that would be appropriate for churches and schools to consider if you have social media accounts. One of her main points is that you should be careful not to allow just one person to have the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, access to managing those accounts, because something could happen to that person and you could technically lose your ability to get access to your brand if they are no longer in that capacity. She mentions perhaps considering LastPass and sharing passwords using like a business class of LastPass website, or just making it your policy that you share passwords with at least 2 people on those sites. And she also recommends not reusing the passwords for different social media sites, having unique passwords for each one, so that if someone were to get access to one, they wouldn't get access to all your social media sites. She mentions a website I hadn't heard of, Martin, called LogDog, which will basically monitor your sites and tell you if anything suspicious is happening, so that you get alerts and things in case something strange happens and you don't have to always be watching out for it yourself. And she brings up one of your points, Martin, one of your favorite points about security 2-step verification. Many sites now are putting 2-step verification in place where you have to perhaps receive a code on your phone or something that you type into the site to indicate that you really are the person that you say you are. So lots of really great tips here. For me, it was really nice to stumble upon Jen's Trends. Cindy wrote to us and said she follows her on Facebook. And if you go to this article, you can easily get to her Facebook page as well. I decided to follow her as well. It's always good to keep up with social media strategy as we strive to communicate in the best ways possible and using all the means possible in this day and age. So you may want to consider following Jen as well. And that's my pick of the week.
Cool. That's such an important topic, and I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with congregations or schools who the person who set up their website or their Facebook account is gone, and maybe didn't leave on the healthiest of terms, and they don't have access, so it's start over, and it's a mess. It's absolutely a mess. So that's awesome advice, is to share that information, make sure that there isn't, it just doesn't hinge on one person and their ability to stay current. Lots of things can happen. It's really important to think about that. So good stuff.
Good reminders from Jen.
Yeah. All right. My pick of the week is from the good people at Square. Square, we've talked about Square in the past. They make a little device that you can plug into your iPad or iPhone and take credit card swipes. So those congregation schools that have need for that kind of thing, we've recommended that kind of on-site point of sale kind of thing where you can take anything. You could take register, VBS registration or whatever you're charging for. Could be concessions, could be lots of different things. They've come out with a different product, and it's a pick of the week because I just used it the other day with my son. We were doing some, he was kind of squaring up with me for some Christmas gifts from last year. I finally got around to saying, hey, you owe me some money for mom's gift or whatever. And then he had done some work for me, so I owed him some money. So we said, well, how are we going to transfer this? Do we just send a plain old check? That's pretty old school. So he suggested, and I had heard of it, but I had never used it. He suggested Square Cash, and there are a bunch of these. Venmo's another one that's very popular, but Square Cash was really simple to use. All you do is you download the app. You can actually go to their website as well. The website is cash.me. But the way the app works is you download the app, and then you give it you have to have a debit card if you're using it for personal business. So it won't work just with a credit card, although the business version of this will accept credit cards. So this kind of works the same way as the old Square. But so you give it your information. You have to give it obviously the number of your debit card, the number on the back, and the expiration date and your name, and then an email address or your phone number. And basically, somebody else just needs an account, and there's no charge. So I plugged in his phone number and said I wanted to send him, whatever the dollar amount was, and within a minute, money had moved from my debit card or my account to his, and then vice versa. Just really quick and easy. It was not hard at all. So very easy way. And there's an Android and an iOS version. So no matter the two major platforms will support this app, and you can even do it online. So if you have a login, and in this case, my login account or my page, they just give you a page for free, is cash.me/$M-Spriggs. And then you can see if you're following along at home, a place to enter, big old place to enter a dollar amount. You enter your debit card number, your optional note, and you click pay, and money's on its way. So if you're trying to divvy up a check at a restaurant, or lots of different reasons, really simple, really easy tool to use, and really free. So there's no charge because you're using your debit card versus a credit card. Now for the credit card side, there is a business account, and for that there is a 1.9% fee or transaction fee, which is actually not bad, but kind of works the same way. So if you have a need for this kind of thing, take a look. It's at cash.me. Again, it's called Square Cash.
Very interesting, Martin. As you were describing it, it reminded me of my experience I had recently at Applebee's. I don't know if you've got an Applebee's around or have seen this, but yep. We sat down for dinner, and there was a little device sitting on the table. And it had games on it and things kind of Buffalo Wild Wings like, where we've played the games before and stuff. Although at Applebee's they cost $1, and
right.
they'll add it to your tab, so you just push a button and it goes on your check that you get at the end of the meal. But the device was actually a card swiper. So when we were done, the waitress didn't bring us a ticket. She clicked a button on there and said, here's your bill,
yep.
And you can swipe your card right here. I was like, wow, this is a fancy world we live in these days. So,
the worst thing about those devices that sit there on your table, what flashes across the screen probably every 30 seconds are desserts. Yeah, not good.
Yeah, we tried to ignore that. We managed to make it out without buying any, but exactly. She asked, can I show you the desserts?
Yeah.
So. But yeah, that was a pretty cool experience.
Very interesting world we live in. You're right. Let's move on to one of our favorite sections, Sally, our community feedback.
Yep, and it's favorite because we have listeners like Dan Knack. We just heard from Dan, who's a member of St. John's in Appleton, and he wrote to us as a follow-up on our Imagine That series, Martin. That was what we did to close out our summer, mostly in the month of August and a little bit into September. We talked about all different angles of working with imagery. And one of the things that we kind of closed out the series on was how to store your images and do it well. So Dan wanted to write to us and share a website. And if I'm get my act together, I'll share it on the screen. The website is titled ScanYourEntireLife.com. And what he says is it has some ideas on numbering and naming photos that we may find interesting. He said he really liked our suggestion to have congregations appoint a photographer to record significant events. With that, they may also want to set up a system to archive those photos, including the who, what, where, and how information, especially the who. He said, as an example, his wife received a magazine from a college where she had taken classes. And in that college was a photo from 50 years ago when a new building was first opened. They listed the names of the 8 people in the photo. When we first take a picture, it's easy to remember that information, he says. But 50 years later, maybe not quite so easy. So having those details would be really important to a congregation as they're looking back at archive type materials and trying to put together anniversary services or whatever it may be. Even looking back at members who are now in their heavenly home and no longer with them, and just being able to identify. So I think some great tips from Dan in that email, and we really appreciate him reaching out to us and sharing the Scan Your Entire Life site. Sounds like an interesting site.
Yeah, it's a kind of leaking over into that whole archivist, mentality where you're not just documenting in pictures, but you're putting that with meaningful information that would have some value, later on. So cool. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that.
I also want to make mention of a link that Jason Schmidt shared recently. I actually saw him share this one on Facebook, and it's to an article from a website called For Every Mom. The title of the article is Parents, if your kids have any of these 10 dangerous apps, it's time to hit delete. So probably a great way to educate yourself about what some of the apps are out there and things that you might be concerned about regarding those apps. But Jason's advice was to read the end of the article first and then go back and read about the apps. So just a little bit from the end of the article, it says the most important thing you can do as a parent to protect your children from dangers that are associated with the use of these apps is to talk with them frequently about their social lives. You can start by establishing yourself as an approachable parent and talking with them early and often about sexuality and romantic relationships. Without a strong bond and open communication, trying to regulate and monitor internet use won't be very effective. However, setting technology boundaries when and where they access the internet and monitoring their online behavior can be effective if you have a strong foundation to build on. And it goes on with some other information. I thought that was great advice. I think parents very quickly want to jump to deleting the apps. And, if kids have it in their mind to use these apps, they might find a way around you deleting them from their devices. So I think that strong relationship is really the important thing here. So Check out the article if you're curious about some of the apps that they list as being of concern.
Yeah, most of the apps you could probably predict, Snapchat, Tinder, Whisper, those kinds of things. They're hookup kinds of apps, that have always been questionable, even for adult usage. So it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Next up, an article from Church Tech Today. It's 3 big guest follow-up mistakes. And when they say guest, I think they're talking about like first-time worship visitors, right, that kind of thing, outreach kind of prospects. And what they say is that you want to be consistent and relevant. And the third word they used was sufficiency. So sufficient in what you communicate. And a great read, they give you some, mistakes that you want to avoid and things like that. One of the things that they share, and it's probably pretty small on my screen, but they actually share a 6-week calendar of follow-up and give you ideas of when to email and, you know, when to stop by or send them a mailing, and to do that consistently over 6 weeks, including a kind of a texting strategy where you just do a simple little text. They even give you an example here. It says, hope to see you tomorrow at Stained Glass Church. Services are at 8 and 9:30. The coffee will be hot. So just a simple little text message on a Saturday. Saturday is prime time for that kind of communication, to remind people about worship or whatever. So check out their calendar that they provide. I think this is pretty useful information.
Nice. Yep, I like it.
And then finally, just to mention that HootSuite announced this week that they have a new online learning page to teach you about social media. Kind of a theme of this show, it seems that social media has come up a lot. They're calling their new online learning space Podium. And if you head over to Podium, they have 6 free online courses about creating social media strategy, generating compelling content, growing your community, identifying brand advocates, and more. So maybe worth the time to invest and learn more about social media strategy. And they're providing this service for free. So can't go wrong with that.
Very nice. Community feedback is such an important part of the show. We'd like you to join that section, join the team. Lots of different ways to do that. If you simply go to our show notes page, wellstech.wels.net, you just look across the top. You'll see icons that you recognize: our Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Google+. Those are all ways that you can contribute, and we'll be on the lookout for what you share there. You can also just leave a comment on any particular show right on the screen there. You can also send an email, WELSTech@wels.net, and that'll get to us and get on the show. One of our favorite places is our WELSTech listserv, where there's not just even people who watch the show, but many more people from across the country and the world who are interested in technology. That's our WELSTech listserv, and there's a link to that at the top of the show notes page as well. So join the conversation.
Yep, we'd love to hear from you. And we actually did hear from one more listener via one of our favorite social media channels, Pinterest. Our friend Amanda Helmkamp pinned this page, A Year of Many First, a first grade teacher's blog. And this is actually a teacher identifying summer review websites for kids. So we're past summertime, but I think it's a great list of kids' websites, and many of them were familiar to me. We've talked about them in times past on WELSTech, things like the National Geographic Kids website, PBS Kids, and Starfall, one of my favorite for teaching children to read. But there were a few new ones, a couple that I'll mention: the Switcheroo Zoo, with animal games and things that they can do online. And this one in particular I thought was really well done. It's called Storyline Online, and it's by the Screen Actors Guild. So these famous actors and actresses are reading stories, and they have the videos embedded right here. So you can listen to someone like, I think this is Barbara Bain, reading The Kissing Hand. And they've obviously got some investment in the site. It's very professionally done, and a fun site, I'm sure, for children to visit and have stories read to them. So that's storylineonline.net. And that's just a couple. So definitely check out the link that we provide in the show notes and visit all the sites that this blogger recommends. Great stuff, and a great ministry resource for teachers out there to make use of.
Sally, our video this week has a lot to do with how our show started, right? Production or 3D projection mapping, a bunch of videos it looks like we found that would be of interest.
Yeah, I think we'll post 2 of them on our show notes page, Martin, about projection mapping. That's that concept that Tom introduced and that showed in the pictures that we showed earlier with the cross being illuminated with
video image
projection.
on a non-rectangular surface.
Right.
Yeah.
And so these 2 videos that we'll post actually show examples of that. And then I found a whole website dedicated to projection mapping Central. And it's just loaded up with amazing videos. You could watch all day. The things that amazing things that people are doing. They have one of projection on the Sydney, Australia, what is it, the Opera House or whatever, that has such amazing architecture and stuff. So yeah, just a lot of really amazing stuff. And probably you've seen it before, but I didn't really know the name that was associated with it, and the fact that churches could possibly use that concept. And it's neat to open up to new technologies and consider their usage for gospel outreach.
Yep. Next week, Sally, we're welcoming back an old friend, aren't we?
We are. Welcome back, Gail Potratz from Emmanuel Lutheran School in New London, Wisconsin. Gail serves as the technology director there, and she has also been probably 7 or 8 years sitting in a co-host seat, a semi-regular classroom technology correspondent. I think that's her official title. And she's going to join us again this school year, and we'll have her join us next Tuesday for the first time.
And what's she going to be sharing with us?
Well, I think Gail will have to explain it a little bit more. She says we should talk about cool things you can make with tech, and she's got some examples to share. So
I like it.
Tune in. It should be
good. Anybody that knows Gail knows she brings her A game every time.
She's got cool stuff going on for sure.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Sally. We will be doing this every Tuesday in the foreseeable future. Show 412 will be next week, Tuesday, 4 p.m. Central. WELSTech Live.wels.net is the place to go if you want to watch us live, where you can ask a question, make a comment, etc. Or look us up in iTunes or Stitcher or wherever. WELSTech.wels.net shows you all those places as well. Thank you for being with us, and we'll talk to you next week.